Good evening and welcome to the Tuesday, March 26th, 2019 business meeting of the Olympia City Council. For the record, Council met earlier this evening for a study session or getting a briefing on our transportation updates, our master plan for the future of our transportation in Olympia. For the record, we have a quorum this evening with Mayor Pro Tem Bateman excused. I need a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
And second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The agenda is approved, which takes us to special recognition tonight. And we have 3 items under special recognition. And I'd like to lead off with item 2A, which is a proclamation recognizing National Service Recognition Day. And to read the proclamation, I would like to ask Councilmember Gilman to do that. And then I will invite forward Ryan Cole. Is Ryan here? I'll invite Ryan Cole forward to receive the proclamation and make some comments. So, Councilmember Gilman.
All right. Proclamation. Whereas service to others is a hallmark of the American character and central to how we meet our challenges, and whereas the nation's elected leaders are increasingly turning to national service and volunteerism as a cost-effective strategy to meet their needs, and whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants address the most pressing challenges facing our communities, they educate students for 21st century jobs, fight the opioid epidemic, respond to natural disasters, and support veterans and military families. And whereas national service expands economic opportunity by creating more sustainable, resilient communities and providing education, career skills, and leadership abilities for those who serve, and whereas AmeriCorps and Senior Corps participants serve in more than 50,000 locations across the country, bolstering the civic, neighborhood, and faith-based organizations that are so vital to our economic and social well-being, and whereas the Corporation for National and Community Service shares a priority with local leaders nationwide to engage citizens, improve lives, and strengthen communities, and is joining with National League of Cities, the National Association of Counties, Cities of Service, and local leaders across the country for National Service Recognition Day on April 2nd, 2019. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Olympia City Council does hereby proclaim April 2nd, 2019 as National Service Recognition Day and encourages residents to recognize the positive impact of national service in our community and to thank those who serve and to find ways to give back to their communities. Signed in the city of Olympia, Washington, this 26th day of March 2019 for the Olympia City Council, Cheryl Selby, Mayor.
All right, so Ryan, do you want to come on up to the podium?
Okay, great. Well, thank you for having us. Our team is here as well, 2 of our team from the United Way. Just to give you an idea of what our VISTA team does, we have 16 VISTAs right now across 2 counties. Gabby is at the Medical Reserve Corps, and she helped to facilitate a response to the measles outbreak in Clark County. And a little closer to us in Lacey, Sarah, one of our VISTAs, is helping to facilitate a bilingual story time for Spanish-speaking youth. So thank you for acknowledging us, and this means a lot.
Thank you. Item 2B is a recognition on a proclamation recognizing April as Earth Month. And normally David Sederberg is here. No Dave this year. Is there anybody here representing Earth Month? All right, we're going to go ahead and read this proclamation jointly. And then I will make sure that Dave Sederberg gets a copy of it. So just for some context, the first Earth Day on April 22nd, 1970 included an environmental teach-in that educated Americans about environmental and conservation issues. And one of our community members, David Sederberg, has been successful in saying that we need more than one day for the Earth. So in Olympia, we recognize Earth Month. And with that, I have this kind of laid out for us to read, and I'll start with Councilmember Parsley.
Whereas Earth Day was created 49 years ago, recognizing the importance for everyone to participate in preserving our natural resources, and on that first day, 20 million Americans rallied for a healthy, sustainable environment, and
whereas the global community now faces extraordinary challenges such as global health issues, food and water shortages, and economic struggles, and
whereas all life forms on Earth have a right to a healthy, sustainable environment,
and whereas Jay Inslee, the governor of Washington State, has proclaimed the month of April to be Earth Month in Washington State in recognition of the urgency of enlisting all people to protect and sustain life on the planet, and
whereas Olympia has followed suit and declared an entire Earth Month and urges others to do the same for the upcoming 50th anniversary celebration in 2020, and
whereas the Procession of the Species was created in 1995 to commemorate the 25th anniversary of Earth Day and to support congressional renewal of the Endangered Species Act, inspiring thousands young and old to deepen their understanding, appreciation, and protection of the natural world, and
whereas all of us as caretakers of our planet have an obligation to change the human behaviors that contribute to climate change and environmental degradation to preserve the Earth's beauty as well as its resources, and
whereas our local citizens, schools, environmental organizations, and businesses have raised over 100 Earth flags to unite those during the entire month working in the interest of the planet, and to build intergenerational action through local activism and global environmental consciousness, and
now therefore, be it resolved that the Olympia City Council does hereby proclaim April as Earth Month. Signed in the city of Olympia, Washington, this 26th day of March, 2019. Olympia City Council, Cheryl Selby, Mayor.
thank you. And you probably caught one of my errors, that actually the state declared it Earth Month, but because of David Sederberg, and then we fell in line with that as well. So big props to him, and as well, it's April, so that's why you don't see the Earth Month flags out. And also, too much information. We aren't going to be meeting as a council for business meetings for 2 more weeks, which would have put us into the middle of April. We wanted to front load this whole topic, so that's why we're declaring it in March for April. So with that, we'll go on to our next special recognition, which is item 2C, and I will go ahead and read this on behalf of the council. It's I can't even say it, Sandy Hobbs' retirement. And so he's got some family representation here. We're going to read this proclamation, and then I'll invite our city manager, Steve Hall, to come up and make some comments. And I'm sure Andy has his whole speech written too. Of course. I like to embarrass him. Yeah, you got a slideshow. Whereas Andy Hobb has served the City of Olympia Public Works Department for 29 years, beginning April 1990 to April 2019, and whereas Andy was instrumental in the creation and development of the city's storm and surface water utility and has overseen its various programs over the past 3 decades, and whereas Andy's extensive efforts on flood protection and watchful eye of troublesome flooding areas over the years have led to a dramatic reduction in flooding in downtown Olympia and across the city. And whereas in the late 1990s, Andy led the development of a stormwater plan and related development regulations for the Green Cove Basin, a forward-thinking strategy designed to protect critical aquatic habitat. And whereas Andy's leadership of water resources has resulted in many important legacy projects, such as daylighting Indian Creek, Yager Park, Black Lake Meadows stormwater facilities, Log Cabin Reservoir, McAllister Wellfield, and numerous on-site septic system conversions, and more. And whereas Andy was instrumental in the development of the low-impact development regulations that will keep Olympia green and protect surface water quality, and whereas Andy's leadership on climate change and sea level rise, including the most recent development of a sea level response plan, will leave a lasting legacy and benefit the city for generations to come. And whereas Andy is an exemplary person and an asset to his community, now therefore be it resolved that the City of Olympia Council does hereby honor Andy Hobb for his years of service to the citizens of the city of Olympia and wish him well in his forthcoming adventures. Signed in the city of Olympia, Washington, this 26th day of March 2019. Olympia City Council, Cheryl Selby, Mayor. Does our city manager want to come over and make some comment, or you want Andy to speak first?
I thought I would start here, if that's okay.
You start here?
I have-
Okay.
I have notes. I didn't want to forget anything. Is that okay?
Sure.
So Andy's hiding, but I am honored to help recognize Andy tonight. Andy and I have worked together a long time for the city of Olympia, and I can't think of another long-term city employee who's had more of an impact and done more important things than the remarkable work that Andy's done. I also want to acknowledge Andy's family, because I think you forget nobody knows more than your family about how much you put into these jobs, how hard you work. So his wife Claire, his boys Riley and Jack, great kids, great family. They know how much he's put into this. I want to acknowledge him. I also want to warn them that now that Andy's retiring, all of his energy will be at home, and so they need to look out for what happens next. I want to also mention his public works colleagues. A lot of his colleagues are here because they also know how much he's contributed over these years. So I just want to say Andy is unflappable. He is Mr. Calm, cool, and collected. Over the years, we've thrown a lot of tough issues his way. And when you read in the proclamation, we had flooding in the 90s, saying, oh, no big deal, except we had flooding in the 90s. I mean, I think he spent his first 3 years in hip waders because we had flooding at Plum and Union that covered Holbert Pontiac car lot. We had flooding at Black Lake and Cooper Point. You couldn't get to the mall. You couldn't get to Apple Park apartment. And this was serious flooding. That was one of his first challenges, to put together a stormwater program to deal with that. And back then, the city collected a whopping $1.50 per month from every citizen. So we had about $20 a week to deal with all this, right? So we had to create an infrastructure and a funding mechanism to actually do some real work. And then when he kind of got that underway, we had to deal with water quality. We were growing rapidly, and we tried to figure out how do we make an urban community with all of our concerns about water quality and habitat. So we threw that Andy's way. He figured out how to protect the most precious parts of our community, like Green Cove Creek Basin, which is salmon bearing, and how to deal with places like Chambers Basin, where people wanted to build houses, and we knew it was not much more than a poorly drained swamp. We had to figure out what were the rules around building in Chambers Basin, and Andy was on the forefront for that. And then when he kind of got through all that stuff and got the system running, everything like that, thought we had the flooding resolved. Along came sea level rise, right? The flooding was back. And so Andy was our leader in trying to figure out, as a coastal community, how we were going to rationally deal with sea level rise. So he's put us on the course to do that work as well. So in all of this work, Andy's been extremely creative and determined and effective. So as I think about his contribution, it's often been said, water is life. And over the course of almost 30 years in the city of Olympia, we have had one remarkable water steward, one remarkable water champion, one remarkable leader in our water resources in the city of Olympia, and that's been Andy Hobbs. So thank you very much, Andy. Appreciate it.
Well, thank you for this evening. You're very generous, very kind, and very gracious not to document all the things that I've messed up along the way, Steve. So I sincerely appreciate that. I'm very fortunate. I'm lucky. I am retiring from a career, and I'm full of fond memories. Fond memories of the city and the good work we do every day. Memories of the wonderful people that I've been able to share my days with for all these years, and of our community, our caring, engaged community. So I'm very appreciative, and I thank you. I will miss you all, and I hope to see you around town. Thank you.
You bet. I think if you would stand there, there might be some comments from the dais. Anyone Have any other additional comments to add? Awesome. All right, Councilmember Jones.
So I just want to acknowledge that I've worked with Andy for about 15 years now. Before I was involved with the city, I knew him as a state employee, and we worked on issues closely together. And I just want to acknowledge, did I hear in that proclamation that Andy's an exemplary human being? Is that what that said? That's amazing.
You heard it, yeah.
Yeah. Congratulations.
I like
on-
that one.
Yeah.
I like that one.
Congratulations on a
My
great
mom will
career.
appreciate that.
Yeah,
Thank you.
Shoot a picture of that and send it to your mom.
Job well done.
Yeah, well done. And I was going to make a joke about taking your shoes off to see if you have webbed feet, but with all that water, being underwater, just that didn't. Never mind.
It happens to some of us. It does happen.
All right. So we will see you around. Never say goodbye. We're going to see you around.
All right. I like that.
All right.
Thank you
Thanks,
very
Andy.
much.
All right. So now it's our agenda designated time period for public comment. Everyone that signed up has spoken before us, so I'm assuming you know the rules, but basically you have 3 minutes. Countdown clock is over my right shoulder. And yes, you guys are well versed in the rules. So here we go. I've got Jimmy Leon Reeves, followed by Cece Coates. Moses?
Yes, my name is Jimmy Leon Reeves, and I live here in Olympia, Washington since 1990, and also go by the name Moses. And of great concern to me is the public safety of this community, and we seem to be facing a possibility of a big earthquake this year. Russians, scientists, that they're going on hard science here. They just, they're supposed to be the foremost experts on predicting earthquakes from magnetic rays in the upper atmosphere, and they're saying that looks like the west coast of the United States will be hit by a big earthquake this year. So what month is the big earthquake going to hit? We've already wasted away just about 3 months of this year. And so we got 9 months left somewhere. That big quake's going to hit, I think. So everyone should, I think it's a judgment of God earthquake, in my opinion. And people ought to repent of their sins and get off the West Coast, maybe go back to the Midwest for safety. I don't think that you can insure everything through insurance and be compensated for your losses after this, because this earthquake is going to be so big it's going to destroy people's homes, whatever. I think these insurance companies are going to go bankrupt due to the heavy losses that's going to occur here in Washington State. I think this earthquake is going to be so big it's going to wipe out this state. You know, it says that in the Bible, I was just reading, it says, you have lifted up your heel against me. He's talking about Judas, I guess. But I think we have done the same thing too. We speak against religion and God and so forth. And that's a type of crucifixion of Jesus Christ again. He said, you crucify me afresh. Now, basically, he's saying, you speak against me. You're against me. And you're going to strike back with a big earthquake, I think. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cece Coates, followed by John Pettit.
Hello, City of Olympia, and my fellow citizens. I'm C.C. Coates. I've been here before. I'll be here again. I'm disabled. Before I was disabled, I was quite accomplished. Honest citizen, subsistence farmer, attempting to live sustainably out on Johnson Point. A former union carpenter, I know a few things about development. I also know a few things about what works and what doesn't. The homeless are not all drug addicts. You try to individualize the problem of homelessness when it is actually a systemic problem. That means a system-wide economic failure. We know what works. What works is taxing those who have the money and building housing. It worked brilliantly in the 30s and the 40s and the 50s, and then America failed us all. Making laws against homeless people doesn't actually solve homelessness. It might make people a little less visible. Sweeping homeless doesn't make anybody less homeless. Shelters are one of the second most expensive ways to get people off the street, but it still doesn't get them homes. You know about Housing First. If you were to follow an aggressive Housing First model, we could actually be building homes. Our new tiny house village, we're spending $1,700 per person per unit. It's not as expensive as putting people in jail, but it's still not a homeless solution. Disabled people need homes. Many of the homeless are disabled, and they get, if they're still not on Social Security, which is arduously difficult to get on, took me 12 years, you get $200 a month. The HEN program, the Housing and Essential Needs program, is a temporary program. As soon as you get on disability or you get a denial, they take you off and you're back on the street. I'm getting $770 a month. We've been giving lavish tax breaks to those who are most affluent, and it is us, the disabled and the elderly, that are paying the price. Is it disruptive to business? Yes. Is it disruptive to tourism? Yes. Do we want that? I don't think so. We need to come up with real solutions to get people homes, not just warehouse them or hide the problem. We need to get rid of these laws that specifically target the people who are suffering the most. It's not helping. It's just costing the city a lot of money and their soul.
Thank you. John Pettit.
Good evening, City Council. I noticed, of course, you brought forth some information here with with Earth Day and Andy Hobb. I would have to tell you that it's always nice to see someone honored that's actually put their life forward towards progressing a better environment. And as much as what you as the City Council have honored him, the truth is that he's had impact through the entire region, because Olympia is more than just a city within the city limits. Olympia is a regional area. And he certainly does deserve recognition. In fact, he is known, as I've talked to many different people, and I have sometimes questions about people, he is known for a man of great integrity and honesty. And I truly appreciate the times that I've had some interaction with him. The issues that I've had, actually, as I went back through the records, I can tell you that he actually made directive to do things an opposite way from how they were done way back in the early 90s, which tells me that, you know, there's nothing wrong with what he did. He did a great job, obviously. So a personal thank you to Andy for helping take care of make Olympia a better place. On a secondary note, you're all familiar with the fact that, yes, I'm very opposed to not homeless people. I'm opposed to drug and illegal drug addiction being rampant in the area, Olympia, the regional area. Now, it is great that things got cleaned up some here downtown, and I think that some of it's distributed itself across the region, different places. But once again, the result has to be to go to a spot to say, how do you get rid of the drug problem? And you have to identify that there is a drug problem. Being down on your luck is not a crime, and nobody should be held against them for that. But a drug issue is something we need to help people with, not hide it. And so the only issue which I wanted to bring as a question, because it was brought out before, I never really questioned it, but I wanted to make sure Olympia's had a history, unfortunately, of a previous pro tem mayor, I believe, that was one time a convicted drug felon. So here's my one question I have, which is, has you as the city council or the city given any directive to not enforce drugs to its fullest, the drug laws to its fullest for the homeless?
Thank you. Thank you. That concludes our public comment this evening. I'm going to request that there are no outbursts from the audience. I didn't think I needed to say that tonight, but normally that's how I open public comment, is that we don't allow outbursts because we need this place to be safe and respectful for all views. So thank you for participating in civility around that. I would like to see if there's any comments, questions from the dais for public comment tonight. All right. Oh, Councilmember Parsley.
I just want to make a comment on the opioid crisis. 2 weekends ago, I was fortunate to be the moderator and organizer of a whole day long discussion on the opioid crisis in veterinary medicine and how is our role in this crisis and what is our role in correcting the crisis. And in preparation for this continuing education, I looked up some very scary facts, and I learned some very unusual facts that a lot of people probably aren't worried about or know about. Did you know that we've already lost 500,000 people to the opioid crisis? We have 1.5 more people dying from opioids than car wrecks in the United States every year. That more people are overdosing and dying in homes than on the street. That when you have an opioid addiction, the best way to overcome the opioid addiction from all the experts is not through abstinence, but actually through medical therapy. That it's easier for an MD or a veterinarian to prescribe opioids than it is to prescribe the medication that can get people off the opioids. We have a lot of work to do. I absolutely agree with you, John. But I think we also have to be aware that the opioid crisis is more prevalent in our homes than it is on the streets. And we've got some big manufacturers out there doing this. We've got some drug companies. But at this time, only 40% of the overdoses are actually from prescriptions. 60% are from illegal drugs. But these illegal drugs are not being primarily consumed by the people on the street.
Thank you for that comment and that perspective. Anybody else tonight? All right, with that, I need a motion to approve tonight's consent calendar.
Second.
Any questions, comments, or polls?
I have some comments to make on items 4C through 4K.
Great, thank you. Councilmember Rollins has some comments. Anybody else? Anybody else? All right, why don't you?
So thank you, Mayor Selby. These items on consent for consideration tonight are various appointments, some new appointments to our volunteer advisory boards and commissions, and some reappointments. And it's just always a great opportunity to recognize that we live in a community that's so blessed to have people that care about the community, that want to make it a better place. And we're really lucky at the city of Olympia that some of those folks choose to put forth their talents and their energy into our advisory boards and commissions. We had 14 new folks appointed from a really competitive pool. We had really great people applying for all of the commissions this time around. We also have 12 returning folks. So looking forward to great work coming out of the commissions this year. We do have a few folks in the audience who are new, and I just wanted to recognize Jim Burlingame, who's here, Aaron Sauerhoff, and Pat Vernon are 3 of the new folks. So thank you so much for joining us here at the city and for committing to do the work to help provide that kind of on the ground and sometimes in the weeds analysis of various issues that we sometimes ask for your help with, or that you bring kind of the other direction that you bring to our attention. So we really appreciate it, and I wholeheartedly, on behalf of general government, recommend the slate as presented tonight.
Thank you. And Councilmember Rollins is the chair of general government, and I would have to concur that it was one of the most competitive groups of applicants that I've seen, and I've been on general government about 4 years total. And Councilmember Gilman also was on general government, and it was impressive, the folks that the talent pool we have in this community. So thanks for stepping forward. And if you applied and you didn't get selected this time, please try again. Please try again. So that, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Consent calendar is approved. Takes us to item 6A, and other business. And I'd like to invite forward Angel Nava, our Arts Program Specialist, and Timothy Grisham, our Arts Commission Chair. And we are going to be going through the approval of the designs for the 2019 Traffic Box Wrap Project. I heard there were 44 proposals this year that were brought forward, and this has been a vastly popular program that we do in the city, and great outreach and great participation in folks voting on the finals. And so let's hear about how that happened.
Thank you. Good evening, Mayor Selby and members of council. Tonight we're pleased to present to you the recommendations for the 2019 traffic boxes. Olympia's Traffic Box Wrap Project turns electrical boxes found on sidewalks and street corners into a collection of public art pieces. Each year, 10 images are selected by public vote via social media and printed in vinyl and wrapped on traffic boxes around the city. If approved, artists will receive $500 for the use of their artwork. Here to share the recommendation is Olympia Arts Commission Chair Timothy Grisham.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, City Council. Thank you for the opportunity to discuss these selections this year. Since 2015, the Olympia Traffic Box Project has wrapped 40 traffic boxes around the city. These new 10 boxes will bring the count to 50. The 2019 process saw 20,920 votes from the community members, which is up by 2,347 votes, or 11% from last year. In the month of February, 44 works of art were displayed on our Facebook page. As I said, there was 20,849 votes, and an additional 71 votes were made in person through paper ballots. The Arts Commission reviewed the top 10 images with the most votes on March 14th, 2019, and the Commission agreed to move the top 10 images with the most votes forward to the City Council. There were, however, a few honorable mentions. First, we had Even Mountains by Ewan Grubbs, Olympia Magic by Shala Brown, Magic Kingdom by Alice Liu, Turtle Love by Sandra Wallace, and I apologize if I mispronounce anybody's name. It is not my intent. And then we have the top 10 selections. Octoflow by Angie Lee Riesenberg, Heron at Boston Harbor by Nancy Broach, Paper Cut Rainier Heron by Missy Maxwell, In the Woods by Michelle Burton, Western Eclipse by Doyle Fanning, Private Garden by Brad Winky, Geometric Humpback Whale by C. Marie Northwest, Curious Creatures by Adriana Gordon, Lady of the Wild by Trixie Eichler, who is my neighbor, Dusty Duo by Joanna Kirkland. And that is our selections. The action before you is to move to approve the recommended 10 images for exhibition on 10 traffic boxes in downtown Olympia to be installed later this summer.
Thank you. Any comments from the dais? Councilmember Jones.
So I've had the opportunity to travel around a little bit recently, and I see other people are now wrapping traffic boxes in the same way. And I just want to say these 10 images blow away anything I've seen in any other community. It's very nicely done. Thanks for your work, and thanks for the community jumping in and participating.
Thank you.
Yes, definitely. So I'll entertain, I'll move to approve the 10 designs for the Traffic Box Public Art Project as determined by public vote.
Second.
All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Well done.
Thanks.
And again, it just speaks to the depth of talent we have in this community. And speaking of depth of talent, we are going to have now item 6B before us, which is approval of the 2019 Percival Plinth Project sculptures for exhibition. And we've been, I don't have the notes in here, how many years we've been doing the Percival Plinth Project. But again, it's one of the most beloved projects that we have comes through the Arts Commission, and it engages the public in unique ways. We line the plinths up along Percival Landing, and the public gets to vote. And so we'll find out not just who were selected to be part of the program this year, but as well the dates that we can participate in the voting. And I believe there'll be a kickoff too that you're all invited to. So I'm just filling dead air while the technology catches up with you. There we are, bingo. All right, again, Angel Nava and Kathy Murray, Arts Commissioner.
So tonight we're also pleased to present to you the recommendations for the Percival Plinth Project. This is an exhibit of lone sculpture along Percival Landing for up to a year, with a public vote to determine which sculpture will be purchased added to the city's permanent art collection. If approved, artists receive $700 for the loan of each sculpture, and the cost of the purchase work up to $10,000 for the People's Prize winner. Here to share the recommendation is Olympia Arts Commissioner Kathy Murray.
She's so much taller. Thank you. Thanks, Angel. Since 2011, the Percival Plinth Project has displayed 114 sculptures on Percival Landing. The 2018 process saw 631 votes from community members, which is a 26% increase from that previous year. In March 9th, 2019, there were 26 sculptures submitted and reviewed by the project jury. The Arts Commission reviewed the jury recommendations of these 16 sculptures on March 14th, 2019. And the Commission agreed to move these 16 on to you for your, do we have the first one yet? Sorry. The first one is Ground by Ken Turner from Seattle, and it is stainless steel. Next we have Bighorn Sheep by Jim Johnson from Salem, Oregon. It is cast bronze. Then we have Life's Ups and Downs by Ken Turner from Seattle, Washington, stainless steel. Inspiration Number 1 by Robert Gigliotti from Bow, stainless steel. Polyhelix by Roger Squirrel from Lake Forest Park, mild steel and stainless steel. The Giant and I by Nathan Robles from Kennewick, it is steel. Inside Out 9 by McCrae Wild from Hood River, Oregon. It's aluminum and steel. Bear Listening in a Story Place by Nancy Thorne Chambers from Olympia. It's bronze. Rabbit Listening in a Story Place by Nancy Thorne Chambers from Olympia. It's also bronze. Blue Spire by Jerry Newcomb, Seattle. It's cast glass and steel. Rapture, Rapture by Carson Boyson from Port Orchard. It's welded upcycled steel culvert. Work by Nathan Robles from Kennewick. It's steel. Squared Away by Roger Squirrel from Lake Forest Park. It is stainless steel. Renovation by Sharon Agnor from Vancouver. It's stainless steel and kiln work glass. Girl Waiting by the Sea by Sandra Hayes from University Place. It's bronze. And Truth Beloved by Marty Rees from Gig Harbor. It is also bronze. Now, the action before you is to move to approve the recommended 16 sculptures for exhibition along Percival Landing for 1 year starting June 2019. And the sculptures would be eligible for the People's Prize Purchase Award. Thank you.
So, Kathy, I know I'm probably not the only one that was going, oh, stop. You went by so fast. So are these images available? I know people need to come down to vote, but are they available on our website for people to look at?
They will be.
They will be.
Yeah, but they will be. Once they're approved, then we'll
pop them up there. All right. So if you're watching at home and you blinked, They will be available after tonight's meeting if they're approved, because there's definitely a lot of more time people are going to want to spend with these, and come down as well. So, did you talk about the kickoff? Or you?
Do we have the kickoff scheduled?
So,
Go ahead, Angel.
June 23rd, the morning of June 23rd, the sculptures will be installed on Percival Landing. And that evening at 5:30, we'll have the kickoff event. So that kicks off the month of voting.
Wait, I'm sorry. Did
yes,
you say the 23rd?
June 23rd, Friday, June 23rd.
It's Friday, June 21st in the.
That's right. That's right.
Okay.
Sorry.
So just for clarification,
ma'am.
it's Friday, June 21st. We're going to have the kickoff. They'll be installed that morning. And the kickoff is on Percival Landing. Will it be will we kind of meet at the Harbor House and then disperse from there?
Yeah, there'll be activities all along the landing. We'll kind of build it on what we did last year with different street performances. We had a food truck on the landing. We had a few hundred people come out and kind of just wander and visit. It was a great event.
Yeah, you built it up last year and it was so successful, really engaging more people. So it's 5:30 to 7:30 p.m. June 21st. And when they have until when to vote?
The month of July. So it'll start the 21st of June and it'll go through the end of July.
End of July. And Councilmember Cooper was nudging me. It's like, when, do you know what year we started this?
Oh, yes.
2011.
2011.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Okay, so we're almost going to be celebrating our 10-year anniversary. Well, we're not a few years anyways.
Almost.
To our 10-year anniversary. So I would ask Councilmember Gilman to make a motion.
I would move that we approve the 16 thought-provoking, awe-inspiring sculptures pictured for display for the 2019 Percival Plinth project.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you so much. Looking forward to that. All right, moving right along, we've got item 6C, which is a request for homeless response plan funding and also a status report. So we've got Stacy Ray, who's a senior planner in our Office of Performance and Innovation, and she's one of the leads of this homeless plan, or homeless response plan that we're in the middle of this year. And there we are.
Well, I apologize. Amy's going to kick us off tonight, so I think she will be here in a moment.
Somebody finding Amy? So I know this is always hard when you're like, oh, I didn't plan on starting this slide. So
yeah. You'll have some materials in front of you tonight. So you have the slides that you can follow along with, as well as an updated timeline for the process. And I also left with you our profiles of our community work group members, which we'll be talking about in a bit as well, formally introducing our community work group tonight.
Do you want to skip ahead and talk about, are you covering the community work group?
I am.
Bios and such. Do you want to jump ahead till that?
Yeah, let's do that.
Oh. If you go back, there's pictures of them. Oh, sorry.
Yeah. Actually, I have one of our community work group members joining us in a moment, and so she's on her way as well.
Okay.
So I think we'll just, I can start with my piece, and when Grace arrives, we will give her the opportunity to talk to.
Thanks for being flexible and adaptive.
Yeah, let's do that. Okay. Yay.
We're normally not this fast. Here's Amy Buckler, our Downtown Programs Manager in Community Planning and Development. and she's going to lead off the discussion around approving or considering a request for additional funding.
Yes, I apologize for being late. Thank you so much
Take a
for
breath.
having me. So I'm Amy Buckler. I'm the Downtown Programs Manager in Community Planning and Development, and I know that Stacy Ray already introduced herself as a Senior Planner with the Office of Performance and Innovation. We are here to give you an update about the city's homeless response plan process, and we also have a funding request to make this evening. As you know, over the last year, the City of Olympia has taken several steps to respond to the public health emergency related to homelessness. This is a complex issue, and an effective response will require long-term strategic thinking, proactive and sustained efforts carried out through regional partnerships. For this reason, the city has just launched a community-led process to develop long-term strategies and actions, along with measures of success and cultivated partnerships. Now, we're not going to solve homelessness over the next 7 months, but by tapping into the collective wisdom of our community, we can set a clearer path regarding what we're doing and why, and build a stronger, more resilient foundation for successful long-term efforts. The City of Olympia's homeless response plan process has officially launched. We are going live. Since your last briefing in January, we've made significant progress, and there are 4 key areas of that I'd like to talk about tonight, and that is community and partner engagement, building coordination with Thurston County, forming a community work group to help shepherd this process, and planning for a series of listening sessions and public workshops that will occur over the next couple months. Now, we are moving into an intensive period of learning and dialogue. In this phase, we will be listening and learning from the whole community. We are open to a wide variety of perspectives and ideas. And then as we move along further into the summer, we will start to form structured dialogue to address tensions that we've recognized and opportunities that may exist within the community. And from there, we will start to draft, test, and establish strategies, actions, and measures. Now, over the last few months, staff and council members have been going out to the community to invite people and organizations to participate in this process. We've been really intentional about reaching out to interjurisdictional partners and community groups that will allow us to expand our reach. These are just some of the organizations that we've met with over the past few months. And just yesterday, I was at Kiwanis. Stacy will be at Thurston Regional Planning Council next week. So this is ongoing work, and I know that you have all participated in that as well and are doing that out in your day-to-day adventures. So thank you so much. We'll all keep it up. Here's some of the things that we've been hearing. So citizens are recognizing that the City of Olympia can't effectively address homelessness by itself. They want to know, what are the other jurisdictions doing? And we've gone out and we've talked to Thurston County and the cities of Lacey and Tumwater, and they are eager to share what they have been learning and the strategies that they are working on to address housing affordability and homelessness. And our process provides space for that sharing to occur and to expand community awareness about what is being done, so that then we can have a better conversation about what's next. What more do we need to do as a region? Community members have been stressing to us that partnership means action. They're happy that we're having interjurisdictional conversations, but at the end of the day, they want to see real partnerships on signed memorandums that are adopted. And neighbors want practical advice about how to respond, both in terms of how can they help, but also how can they work together to safely address impacts in their backyard. Not everybody out in the community feels like their voice is being heard, so there is appreciation that we are being intentionally inclusive. And we're getting a lot of questions about our emergency response. And I'm hearing that the weekly newsletter is helping a lot. I'm getting a lot of compliments about that. There's appreciation that the City of Olympia is trying new things and taking action, maybe a sense of skeptical optimism and admittance that there's a lot more that needs to be done. And overall, I believe that there's a willingness to participate in our effort. Another positive step is that we are deepening our coordination with Thurston County, which, as you know, is so important because Thurston County oversees much of the policy and funding for our regional homeless service system. When we went and briefed the county and invited them into our homeless response plan process, all three commissioners were enthusiastic about working together, and they did follow up by holding an all-day session in February regarding regional homeless response that all the other jurisdictions were invited to as well. The county also just hired their first homeless response coordinator, a woman named Keely Marino, and she's been a great link for us as staff so that we can start to develop coordination, everything from emergency response to long-range planning. And we are meeting with county staff now on a regular basis. And one thing that we are attempting to do through that coordination is create some alignment between our homeless response plan efforts and another effort that's happening. The county is updating their 5-year homeless housing plan this year. And so let me just spend a minute to talk about how these two plans relate. So the county's 5-year plan includes goals, strategies, and actions that establish the foundation of our regional shelter, housing, and service provision. So this is really important for the City of Olympia because in order for us to effectively respond to homelessness at our doorstep, we need there to be successful implementation of the county's 5-year plan. But the 5-year plan may not address everything that our community needs and is asking for. The county's plan is required by the state of Washington in order for Thurston County to receive state and federal funding, and it's guided by very prescriptive requirements. Our planning process is much more flexible so that we can adapt it to the needs of our community. So our plan may include programs that are specific to, say, a need in our neighborhoods. Or it could even raise a regional issue that isn't identified in the 5-year plan that we want to serve up. And I'll give you an example. And I'm using this example because this is something that's already in one of our adopted plans. It was brought up in our downtown strategy. And that is the need for a regional policy discussion about the role of downtown as the almost exclusive location for adult shelter services within Thurston County. And there's a question about, as Thurston County is set to grow by another 100,000 people over the next, not even 20 years at this point, can downtown continue to sustain this role? Or is there a need for service provision in other urban hubs where there are also needs? So our process may be able to continue with that and serve it up in these regional partnership meetings. The last thing I want to mention about our county coordination is that, as you know, addressing homelessness is more than just our emergency response. It's also about addressing the upstream causes and effects, namely a need for more affordable housing across the spectrum. And you may recall that the county's Thurston Thrives partnership hosted a couple housing summits over the past couple years, talking about barriers and opportunities and how we can expand affordable housing development. So there is a talk of hosting a 3rd housing summit this year, and city staff is actively engaging with the county about putting that together. So Stacy and I are really close in that conversation and wanting to align that into our process. So another area where we've progressed is in formation of our community work group, and I'm going to turn this over to Stacy to talk with you about that.
Thank you, Amy. So this process will be hosted and shepherded by a community work group made up of 12 members who bring a really diverse set of perspectives and life experiences to the group. Members of this group were selected because they embodied key characteristics that are really integral to a participatory leadership process and a community dialogue like we're entering into. Those include being curious, being open-minded, committed, team-oriented, passionate, and a desire to play an important leadership role in this process and going forward as we respond to homelessness. So our community work group members, the role of a community work group member is to invite a broad variety of viewpoints and life experiences into the process. It's to help host the conversations and listen to the participants, to seek out learning opportunities, to reflect out to participants and community members what's being heard, so to make sure they're capturing it correctly and fully, and coalescing the input that they're taking into strategies, actions, and ways to measure progress. So it's valuable to be clear on also what this community work group is not and what makes it different than work groups that we've hosted in the past. This is not the group that holds the quote-unquote power or the decision-making power in this process. That's really not the intent. One of the most important elements of their job is to listen and to ensure that all parts of the community issues are explored and represented within this conversation. This is not a group of experts, and there are certainly some folks on this group that have expertise, but they're really charged with bringing together the community's collective expertise and ideas for how to solve this issue. And they're not representatives or advocates. So this group will bring a variety of perspectives, a variety of lived experiences, and knowledge, but we're not asking them to advocate or represent for one particular organization or point of view. And lastly, they're not advisory to staff, and they're not advisory to you. So that's different as well, but they're sharing their findings with the community. And they're really playing that role, that leadership role within the process for the benefit of the community and the process as a whole. So we have 10 confirmed members of our community work group as of today. In alphabetical order, Kim Adney, Grace Burkhart, Eli Charno, Scott Cliffhorn, Robert Coit, Jennifer Davis, Amy Evans, Derek Harris, Meg Martin, and Selena Rodacher. And not all are currently shown here, but I want to recognize that Eli is with us tonight, so I just would like to formally recognize them and thank them for participating in this process on the community work group. This group still has 2 vacancies for which I'm in the process of confirming members. I'm still reaching out specifically to members who bring perspectives that will complement and add to what's represented here in the profiles that you have in front of you as well. So next I'm especially pleased to invite Grace Burkhart, who's a member of our work group, who's here with us tonight to introduce the group further and share a little about her experience thus far on behalf of the other work group members. So, Grace.
Hello, Madam Mayor and council members. I'm Grace Burkhart, and on behalf of the Homeless Response Community Work Group, we want to thank you guys for convening this homeless response plan process. So our work group is, I'll tell you a little bit about it. So our work group is a diverse group of citizens who have we all have vastly different experiences and backgrounds. So we are excited for the opportunity to connect with each other and with the community through our different lenses. We've been business owners, and some of us are business owners. We've had struggles with addiction, mental illness, homelessness. We understand what it feels like to be different than what's considered normal. our jobs have been working and serving residents in local Olympia and throughout the region. We have families, we've grown up here, we came here later in life sometimes. So you can kind of see that we're kind of from all corners of Olympia, and we're working together with all of our different perspectives to try to get a common goal accomplished. So I'll tell you a little about me. So I am a working mother. This is my daughter Marley, by the way. So I'm a working mother of 3. I'm a wife, a student, and amongst other things, I'm a homegrown Olympian. I've enjoyed growing up here and experiencing things like Arts Walk, Breeze Point Park, Lake Fair, the Pet Parade, the live music scene, Percival Landing, Farmers Market, exploring Puget Sound, and all the other things that Olympia has to offer. These experiences have definitely contributed so much to growing up in Olympia for me, and I'm really invested in making sure that happens for my kids and then my kids' kids themselves. I care about Olympia, especially downtown. So I was a business owner downtown for many years, and then I also participated in working at our Olympia Community Court with justice-involved individuals. Let's see, I have worked at the legislative level, and then I currently work with youth in our community. So this has given me the opportunity to see firsthand how youth and adults and families can fall into homelessness. And it takes a village to address this kind of complex issue. So I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, Grace. And thank you, Eli, as well, for being here tonight. So I would like to, again, just recognize this whole group of individuals for having accepted this role, because this was no small ask. So I was sitting down and asking them to dedicate a lot of time and energy to this process, but it was thrilling because just every time I sat down with someone, they said, wow, this is a big ask, but I feel like this is so important to the community and that I really need to be a part of this. And so, thus far, I've really seen that come through with this work group, that they are a committed and passionate group and really do embody the characteristics that we were looking for. So the Homeless Response Plan Engage Olympia site is now live. This is the best way in which to quote unquote meet our members and for anyone who wants to be involved in the process to learn more and get involved. So I just would like to take a moment to highlight that. In particular, recognize Kelly and the communication staff, Josh Lynn, for having put together this page for us. But this is really, truly a one-stop shop for starting to participate in this homeless response plan process. So right now, we have our timeline is available on there, as well as opportunities to be involved and meet the community work group. So. And to learn a bit more about, well, we'll work on that. I thought I was clicking on the right, but that's okay. Anyway, so their profiles and pictures and introductions are all available right now, and this site is live and anyone can go to it. So I will also say we include the summary of our community stakeholder interviews, which we had done prior to launching this process to kind of understand what the current state was from a variety of stakeholders related to homelessness. And so that is a resource for our work group, and it's also now available on our Engage Olympia site. So as you can imagine, this group will be taking in a lot of information and trying to make sense of what it is they're learning about this and complex issue. To prepare for this work effort, the first several meetings have been spent learning about each other, because that's the first step in establishing a environment of trust that will be needed to tackle these challenging issues together. They've also outlined how the group wants to work together as well. We've continued to learn about participatory leadership, and the group, we've been walking through some of the underlying models that guide the participatory leadership approach and the tools we'll be using in the process. This helps ground the group in how the members can be completely present and authentic and really be welcoming hosts in this process. These conversations have also included exploring their personal perspectives and lenses, because being able to recognize those in and of themselves and others is imperative to being able to listen deeply and be inclusive in the information that they're taking in throughout this process. So the next steps are moving more, as Amy noted, into the learning phase by attending and listening to what's being shared by participants at the upcoming public engagement events this week and following in April and May. So at the same time, the group will also be looking for gaps and other possible areas for learning and working to clarify the purpose of the overall process. Because having a clear purpose is like navigating with a compass. So that's one of the next important steps for this group. Helps keep the process on track and on target for developing those actionable outcomes. So with that, I'll go ahead and turn it back over to Amy.
Thanks, Stacy. So we are moving into an intensive period of community and stakeholder engagement. And, in general, what we're trying to learn here, what are the tensions and opportunities within and among our community? What's working? What's not working? What does the community think that success looks like? What are the barriers to that? And how do we overcome those barriers? Stacy talked about the available online opportunities. We also have scheduled 2 public workshops on April 20th and May 4th. One is on the east side and one is on the west side. These workshops have the same format, so people don't have to go to both, but we wanted to offer it twice in order to increase the engagement. Anybody is welcome. We've also planned 2 listening sessions with targeted stakeholder groups. So one is for community resource partners that are doing on-the-ground work, social service providers, mental health providers, law enforcement, housing developers. We also have another listening session for the downtown community. So this is anybody who lives and works in downtown. We also recognize that there are some stakeholder groups that may not be as comfortable sharing in large format sessions. So one would be people who are experiencing homelessness, and we're working with some of our social service providers, partners, to design a smaller group format that will be comfortable and meaningful for those folks. And also working with our downtown business community to put together a couple focus groups for business and property owners. As we know, they're not always comfortable in large session formats because sometimes when they share their experience, there's been some retaliation out there in the community. So as you can see, this is a very intensive bit of work that we have over the next couple weeks. So real quickly, I think, it's helpful to just review the roles. As city council members, your role is to invite the community to participate. As things unfold, you are deeply listening and learning with the community. You are inviting our regional partners into the process, and because you are in a very unique and special position to help create an even stronger network of partners and help make connections maybe where there weren't any before, find that extra piece of the puzzle that could make the strategy come to life. You're already doing that, of course. You're doing a great job, but please keep it up. And then as staff, the things that we are focused on right now are facilitating the community work group, which meets twice a month. We're coordinating with the county, meeting almost weekly, conducting a whole series of outreach and presentations across the community. We're designing all the engagement events and online tools, doing all the marketing and communication. And then as we move further into this process, we'll be identifying and analyzing potential city actions for the coming years. And all of this leads me to make a request. As the scope of this work around the homeless response plan has come into clearer focus, staff is anticipating that we'll need a bit of additional resources to support the public process. We are entering into a very intensive learning phase. There are a lot of stakeholders. There's some additional regional coordination that, of course, we welcome, but we weren't quite expecting to be so full throttle at this stage in the process. It's a very tight timeline that we're working under, and the reason for that is there's just a sense that the public doesn't have the appetite for a really long, protracted public process. They're eager for action, and they want to weigh in. So there's an expectation that we will have multiple engagement opportunities to reach broadly across the community, and that there will be a need for a quick turnaround of summary reports of each one of these meetings and online tools to be available to our community work group in a quick turnaround, to be available to you, and to be available to the public online at Engage Olympia. This transparency and inclusivity is one of the most important aspects of this work. And, you know, as things are coming into full focus, we are anticipating that additional resources would help so that we could bring somebody in to help us sort through the amount of public input that we're anticipating that we're going to receive, and rapidly turn around summaries of that and be able to present it to the community work group. And so one of the first questions that people have asked me as we've talked about it internally is, couldn't you use interns for this work? And of course, we have used interns to sort out trends and gems in planning processes before, and they do a great job. But a few things in this particular case. One, when we take on interns, it's really important to us that we have quality time to provide mentorship that is going to help provide a positive learning experience for the student. And we simply don't have the capacity to do that in this phase of the process. Secondly, the quality of work that we're going to need here is turned around so quickly. It really requires a level of professional sophistication. It's more than just trends and gems. We need someone that understands our wonky world and can help sort out what are policy issues, what are strategies, what are actions. So we have the ability to do that. This is really a time and capacity issue for us. So with that, that is what is leading to our request this evening for an allocation of $30,000 of council goal money to help support this public process. And thank you for your consideration of that. We're happy to answer any questions.
All right, Councilmember Parsley.
Turn my mic on and off. I'm sorry about that. First, I just want to say that when I ran for office, had all these grandiose ideas. When I didn't realize was that the city staff is already working on all of it, and they're working on it incredibly creatively and using amazing tools. And honestly, after taking the trauma-informed communication course, it was an eye-opening moment for me to realize that our community as a whole is suffering a collective trauma, while those who don't have shelter are the ones most impacted. Like ripples from a pebble hitting a pond, our whole community has this trauma, and we're carrying it. And I see this participatory leadership process as a way for our community to engage in building our own resilience and response to the crisis, which I applaud, and I think this is amazing. I just wanted to say that. I'm not sure I've come out as clearly as I have in the past. I also want to say that I think the process which you're building is going to be as important or more important than what your end product is going to be. And I'm excited to see what that is. I have just a couple questions. One, I want to make sure I understand end actions. I'm assuming that the end actions of this process will provide policy, informed policy, as well as actions directly by the city, as well as help direct actions within the community. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay, I just I want to make sure I'm clear on that. The two things I want to really ask, as a city councilor, as we sit up here and we make policy decisions, I want to think that we're doing it also from an informed viewpoint. Are there going to be opportunities for us to be a fly in the wall, not interfere or interact with the process, just be a fly in the wall for us to be able to listen and watch the process as it grows? And then the second question, and this may get shot down, how much of this $30,000 would be actions that could potentially be performed by a future policy analyst or consultant that the city is considering engaging?
So the first answer to your question, is there opportunities for the city council to be on the fly on the wall? Absolutely. Every single one of our workshops and listening sessions, we want to have council members there listening, just like you did in the budget process for last year. So we're going to be continually feeding you those dates. Secondly, I'm not really sure about what the process is for the policy analyst. I will say that we do have a need for this work to start almost immediately. So I don't know where that process is.
Okay, Councilmember Gilman.
First, I just want to appreciate and honor the people who agreed to volunteer to be on this advisory group. That's a huge gift to the community. I really think we all appreciate that a great deal. And I just wanted to follow Lisa's question about council's listening job in all of this. I wonder if we might reconsider whether or not a quorum is triggered. Many of the invitations have come saying there should only be 3 people because it might be, and I have a sense that a quorum doesn't apply in these kinds of situations, and I'd like us to clarify that, because my preference would be that we didn't have a hard limit of 3 council members at any particular session. I don't think that serves us. I think the community expects 14 of our ears to be in the room.
Good math.
Yeah.
So I think in the past, haven't we said a quorum may be present, and that kind of covers it?
In the past, I've said that if council members wish to go and be present at a meeting, but not participate and not engage with each other, they can do so just as members of the public can do so. However, if the intent of the council member is to go to the meeting and to engage, then that may change the situation, and then it would have to be noticed as a public meeting under the Open Public Meetings Act.
Can you clarify engage? Like
speak.
So, but speak to a constituent or speak to staff? We can't speak, we just have to literally be a fly?
If you're speaking to each other, okay,
okay,
people may believe that you are then engaging in the process without being noticed as an open public meeting. So that's why I've always said that you can go and attend, but don't sit together, don't engage with each other, and don't engage during the course of the meeting. If you wish to do those things, you can. It's just that under the Open Public Meetings Act, then you must give it proper public notice.
Notice. Okay, it's just hard not to like even acknowledge each other or talk to each other when we're out, but that's all right. Does that help make Councilmember Jones?
I guess I would ask, what's the downside of noticing them all as public meetings also?
There is no downside to doing that.
So I would urge us to be there, and we're really in a listening. We're not there to share our opinions. So that's what I would urge.
Yeah, I don't see a downside to noticing that there may be a quorum present.
There is no downside to doing that. Just so you are aware, there are different thoughts about this issue with regard to the Open Public Meetings Act. Some people are very, very strict in their interpretation of it and assume that if you've got a quorum present, then you have to notice it no matter what, even if there is no participation or engagement among the council members present. I don't adhere to that strict interpretation. I believe that you can be present, but it is important that there be no engagement or interaction among council members, so the public is misled thinking that there is a quorum that is present and active. In other words, you're just like a member of the public that's attending a meeting that's open to the public. But bear in mind that if that's something that may be difficult or that you don't really wish to do because you wish to engage with each other and talk to each other, then it's easier just to notice it as a public meeting.
Councilmember Rollins, you had something to add?
Oh, just that no legal downside, but I gather the practical downside would be potentially less free-flowing conversation with the community work group and like specific targeted for the listening sessions, not so much the workshops that are open like all call to the whole public, but for the listening sessions that are for a targeted sector of the community.
Yes, yeah, that's a great clarification. So, I mean, this is all new territory, right, for us, and when we've done lots of community outreach events before, but this, so I don't know whether I hear cleared. So we say a quorum may be present if it's if it's already noticed as a public meeting, not a public meeting, but if it's like open to the public, then.
Can I add? You have two that are kind of general public, y'all come. We could easily notice those as a potential meeting. Okay. The others, as Councilmember Rollins may have been referring to, are more specialized group. And there's the legal notice, but then there's also the effect that all the council members might have on those groups if you're all there. So they're two different.
So to be sensitive to those two different types of meetings. Councilmember Parsley or Councilmember Gilman,
Can I recommend in those situations that the work group as well as Amy and Stacy potentially guide us on which of those groups we should be more cognizant on keeping fewer of us there?
Yes. All right. So we'll take your lead on that as far as which groups we can notice as potential quorum, and then others that need to be more tightly managed. Is that fair? All right. I think we all figured that out. All right. So any other questions, Councilmember Parsley?
It's more to Councilmember Cooper about, and those that are actually interviewing and working with the policy analyst. Is this something that we should be looking at as council goal money, or are we going to get a policy analyst and are they going to be capable of what they're asking? If they're not, that takes that question off the table.
I think it's a timing issue, but.
Yeah, so I would say based on what we've heard about the urgency, it would be better to go ahead with council goal money now. It'll probably be the end of April before we have the consultants on for the analysis piece.
For policy work, yeah. I was going to ask the same question because it just seems like there's going to potentially overlap, but because of the urgency and the timing issue, I see why you're going for a request for council goal money. All right, Councilmember Cooper.
So I move the approval of the funding request for $30,000 to support the homeless response plan public process.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion passes. Thank you for a thorough report. Oh, yeah. I'm sorry.
That was a nay for me.
A nay. So sorry.
Okay, I had some comments, but that's all right.
Oh, no, please.
Thank you. So let's see. I had a couple just quick questions. So can you tell me the dates again of the public workshop?
Yes.
And are those listed on the Engage Olympia website somewhere?
Yes, they are on Engage Olympia, and it is Saturday, April 20th at Olympia High School from 9:30 to 11:30 a.m.
Okay.
And Saturday, May 4th at Capitol High School, 9:30 to 11:30 a.m.
Okay, thank you. And I was wondering if the folks involved in this process, staff, have had the opportunity to talk with some of our emergency management folks in the fire department, specifically around like the parallels that this kind of a situation. It seems strikingly similar to what the process of emergency recovery can look like. So not so much like the short term, the immediate day to day, but like how do we actually craft a vision for moving forward. I just find that field really fascinating, and it's really developed, and it's like a totally different lens on the situation, but could be really helpful for enriching just the way that we look at it. I heard someone say recently I was meeting with some constituents, and they said, when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And I just think that that's a helpful lens. So wanted to bring that up, as well, the lens of internally displaced people. So in other countries, that's where people have to leave their homes, either because of violence or natural disaster. And there are some really interesting community strategies in some of those places. And there's a local group called International Trauma Treatment Program, ITTP. And they do this work internationally, like in communities that are dealing with trauma, like Councilmember Parsley identified, and like the collective trauma. And it could also be an interesting lens just for like the work groups, ongoing education through the process. But internally displaced people, I think, is a really helpful frame to, we say homelessness, and there's just a lot of meaning and stigma and preconceived ideas about it that are stuck to it, but just like examining it through that international lens, maybe good education for all of us. And my reason for the nay vote, as you all know, I've been a really strong supporter of the plan going forward, and I'm really excited, and this group looks outstanding. I would have favored the money coming from other homelessness response funds that are currently allocated toward the emergency. I've just found the council goal money invaluable for covering those unexpected gaps that come up in community needs, everything from keeping services open out in the community to keeping like the entrepreneur program with Enterprise for Equity. And it's just a lot to lose what feels like so soon in the year. So that's my nay vote, but I'm really excited about the process moving forward and glad that you'll have the support.
Thank you. Did you have a question about the engagement with the fire department? Was that a question?
I guess it's just maybe whether it's happened, but just more a comment that it might be like Greg Wright and Patrick Knopf are just really awesome and resources while
Yeah,
still here.
I think it's a really good point, and I just wanted to mention that it did come up, especially during Snowmageddon, because we hadn't had a standard operating procedure for how we would respond to an emergency at the mitigation site. And so now we are engaging around that, but I think you bring up something deeper that continued conversation will warrant.
Thank you for those comments. And for the record, I'm sorry, I didn't hear the nay. So, but you explained it quite eloquently for your position. So thank you. And Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, and I appreciate your comments about the how strong of a helper the council goal money can be along the way, and actually would bring from that comment that it might be time to look at an inflationary adjustment to council goal money, because $100,000 goes a lot less far than it used to. So.
Well, our chair of finance, I'm sure you can look at that for our future budget. But and I like the question about the policy analyst.
Just for the record, you started with 142,000 this year.
So now it's gone.
Yeah. All right. So that leads us to any other comments? Are we good? Okay. So council reports, and I'll lead off with the mayor's report. Just for the record, we do not meet for a business meeting next Tuesday, although we will continue all of our other work and commitments for council, but no business meeting next Tuesday night. And then the following Tuesday night, we'll be meeting as a council in our semi-annual joint meeting with the Squaxin Tribal Council. So we will not be meeting here as a business entity for 2 weeks. And then as well, I just wanted to point out one of my favorite things is the five things that comes out with your utility bill, and it sweetens the bill, I think, because you got like a golden retriever to look at. Who doesn't love that? But it's always got great content in there. And I want to note, now that spring really feels like it's here, that there's tips in there for natural yard care. And we were just talking about stormwater with Andy Hobbs' retirement, and understanding the impact of things that we put on our lawns and in our yards that impacts our stormwater. talks about that, but then as well, the Saturday drop-off site at the maintenance center is now open, and they accept your yard waste, extra recycling that doesn't fit in your recycle bin you can take there, scrap metal, and they are open Saturday mornings from 9 a.m. to 2 p.m., and that's 10th Avenue Southeast at the maintenance center. So that's my report. And I will go to my left, Councilmember Rollins.
Thank you. I have nothing to report.
All right, Councilmember Cooper.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. Just a few updates from last week's Finance Committee meeting. So we continue to have our long-term capital needs in front of us. That number is now up to $380 million over the next decade. And we have a really nice spreadsheet that's now organized by sort of priority area, so parks projects, utility projects, general fund projects. So if you're interested in that, you can reach out to me or Debbie Sullivan, and we can get you that information as well. We've had a really nice body of work done to look at our loans and our debt capacity and where those things age out over time. So we also had a very somber discussion about year-end fund balance. For folks who have been around, this will be the easiest exercise we've ever had. Unobligated, we have exactly $155,000 to allocate. And so the Finance Committee will be recommending, and I think we'll see this in a few weeks, that we fund the part of the case management software that's needed in our courts to bring them out of a paper system. In preparation for partnering with the county on a courthouse, we felt like that was a pretty fundamental thing we should have in place in order to be able to partner on criminal justice. And then the remaining $100,000 would go into a budget stabilization account to create that account, with the understanding that policy recommendations from the Finance Committee will be forthcoming around that. We spent quite a bit of time talking about our fire equipment replacement needs going into the future. As you can imagine, fire engines and trucks and rescue vehicles cost a lot, so we are going to be working really hard to bring a recommendation to council for how to fund that over the short term and over the long term, and that will also include moving the fire fleet into the rest of the city fleet and establishing reserves for larger apparatus and smaller vehicles, with the fleet looking at it as a whole. Lastly, I have a visual. And so, as you know, the Finance Committee has been looking at and reacting to a couple of referrals from the council previously around minimum wage. And we have backed away from minimum wage as the only policy lever in front of us. And so what you see up here is sort of a logic model built to look at building a resilient economy for all Olympians. For me, having been here when we wrote the comprehensive plan updates and the new economy chapter, this brings it to life. And so it's an opportunity for us to really study the business and employee profiles across the city. What does it cost to live here? What kind of talent and workforce do we have to look at? And this is the words that came from our staff, and it really resonates with me and the committee, to look at the economic ecosystem in the city of Olympia as a whole. And so the question being, we want to have every lever that's possible for reducing inequity in our community, whether that's for a small business owner or a low-wage worker. And so the idea is that to move forward, we have staff-level work happening in the first bucket of kind of the what we know sets of data. The second piece is going to take a little bit of work. And so the idea that the Finance Committee has is to go ahead and use that as the trial balloon for our new policy analysts, to give them this kind of scope of work and ask them for their reaction as far as what it will take, how long it will take, how much of the contract will it cost. And then if it's more than the 4 hours that we're allowed to trigger as a committee, we'll bring that back to the full council to look at before moving ahead. And then I'll add that update because I'm working with Jay Burney on that process. We have scheduled interviews for the 11th, I believe, of April. We're interviewing 4 of the 9 firms who applied, and I hope to have 1 or 2 firms in place with council approval by the end of April.
Great. I'm all about infographics, and that lays it out beautifully. So thank you. I know there's been a lot of discussion at finance, so thank you.
Yeah, Debbie Sullivan and Mike Reed worked really hard on this, and they took a lot of pushback from me, and it's really impressive. The other thing I would say is this is our opportunity to bring Mike Reed, our economic development director's work, to life. we don't have a work plan as a city that directs that. And so this will give us the opportunity to really zero in a little bit more finite how we want to see that time spent.
And it looks a lot like a strategy map from Thurston Thrives, but which is a well-vetted format for it to make sense, and it leads to something. And so I really appreciate Debbie's work and Mike's work with that.
Can I'm not sure where this would fit, probably under evaluating Olympia's current economic ecosystem, but I just wanted to lift up one sector that I hope that sometimes gets overlooked, but I hope that we get a chance to look at and learn more about, and that's the growing cooperative sector, cooperative businesses. There's a lot written out there right now about how cooperatives can be helpful in preventing major market crashes and other social and economic problems. And we are really lucky to have the Northwest Cooperative Development Center here in Olympia. They're hosting a national conference of worker-owned cooperatives in May. And it's just, I think
that could fit under an industry sector.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can add that, definitely add that in the mix. There's a lot of discussion about sort of private sector, public sector, union or non, and co-ops definitely fit into that.
Excellent. Sorry. Yes, Councilmember Gilman.
So I really appreciate this work, and I'm glad you're rolling it out for us. I'm curious. My understanding has been that the non-earned income of students and elders or seniors were both significant parts of our local economy, and they're not. I don't see them reflected. So, are students and retired baby boomers helping drive?
Can you explain what unearned like?
That they either have money from their families, student aid, Social Security, pensions, other than wage income.
Okay.
So we really make sure we analyze the full spectrum of worker from.
Well, they're not workers, but they're
right,
people who live here and spend money.
Of the economy.
Yeah,
yes,
yeah,
absolutely.
yeah.
Good addition. Thank you.
And Councilmember Parsley.
I think just to go to what Councilmember Gilman was saying, I think that's why I really got tickled by the word ecosystem, because it's not one thing, it's a circular thing that works together, and that includes everything that's been mentioned here. And that's why I like ecosystem. We're hopefully not going to leave any part of it out, and we're going to look at all of it and see how it fits together.
Excellent.
Great additions. I saw Debbie taking notes, so I'm sure we'll get them added right in. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Councilmember Jones.
Thank you, Mayor Selby. I just have three things to talk about. The first, we had a study session this evening on the Transportation Master Plan that is moving forward. And I've been working with, through my role as chair of Thurston Regional Planning Council, I've been working with the Transportation Policy Board chair, and we are bringing forward a session on autonomous vehicles. It'll be a joint meeting of the Policy Board and the Planning Council. The date is to be determined, and I'll certainly let you know, but we're targeting early May for that. And we will bring in futurist planners from the State Department of Transportation who are specialists in this field. So I encourage you to attend if you can make it. To be determined, yeah. Coming soon to a meeting room near you. The second was that we had a great presentation this evening on our homeless response, and Amy and Stacy were able to make a distinction between emergency response and long-range response. And I just want to acknowledge the coordination that's happening now with Thurston County. In my experience, the relationship with Thurston County on homelessness has improved dramatically for a variety of reasons. But the most recent action that I wanted to bring to your attention is that on March 19th, the county commissioners put forward an action to hold a public hearing on May 7th. And that action is to allow for emergency housing in the unincorporated area. That is to modify their current ordinance to allow for mitigation sites outside of Olympia. This is a huge deal. It's a proposal at this point. That public hearing closes, or actually comes to conclusion on May 7th. I believe that they actually will be taking comments from the public on May 7th, but there's an opportunity to comment anytime between now and then. Their ordinance is online if you'd like to see it. Just a little bit of background. I want to thank our legal staff for preparing the materials that the county is using in putting together this revision to their ordinance. And I was honored to be able to take that to each of the commissioners and see some progress. Now, again, it's a proposal at this time. So we're hoping that we'll be able to open up the opportunity for mitigation sites in the unincorporated area. And then the final thing at each of your desks is a referral. There's been quite a bit of discussion about this particular referral, but it is a referral to the Heritage Commission. And I want to thank Council Members Rollins and Gilman in supporting this referral. Essentially, it's a request to identify a meaningful and effective way to honor and commemorate the vision and the goals of Dr. Martin Luther King and their significance to our community through both bold and permanent action. It acknowledges that the traditional way to do that is to dedicate a piece of public infrastructure or a public asset for that purpose, but it asks the Heritage Commission to bring back a recommendation to the City Council. And so I'm looking for approval of that referral.
This is a consensus, right? It's kind of a thumbs up. Yep.
Generally.
Yeah, generally. We don't.
Are we, I can't remember what we had at the retreat. Are we supposed to present it 1 week and then vote on it the next?
Yes.
Yes.
That's right.
So we won't be able to take action on this until the third week of April?
Yeah, that's our policy.
Very well. Perhaps we could give them a heads up.
Well,
Actually, it'll be after that. The third week of April, not the third week. Yeah. Yeah. So when we meet for a business meeting. Yeah.
Very well.
I'm sorry, just tomorrow night we're meeting with the Heritage Commission as part of the chair, as part of the board and commission, so we could mention this as a possible work item for the Heritage Commission as they prepare their work plan for next year.
Great.
Because they'll have to make sure it works into their work plan, which we're going to be meeting with general government tomorrow night.
Correct.
Right. To talk about
Correct.
that. That's right.
Great, thank you.
Thanks for bringing that forward. Councilmember Gilman.
Thank you. Land Use and Environment met last week on the 21st, and both of my colleagues were very generous in allowing us to have a conversation with Leonard Bauer and Carrie Retlin, also at the table with us, to talk pretty broadly about what are we trying to accomplish with affordable housing incentives, and we had Carrie lay out what are the tools. There's the multifamily property tax exemption that we're most specifically considering right now for a recommendation to council, but there's a whole suite of housing production tools that other communities use in Washington. So he ran through those, and we gave direction to staff so that they'll continue to flesh these out. But the place that we got to, I think, in the pithiest summary, is that we have to find a balance between infrastructure and service investments and incentives in reducing requirements, right? That if we're going to put resources into this, it can be by either bolstering what we offer as a city in terms of infrastructure and services, or it can be by making a gift to somebody to incentivize their development. So that was the conversation we had that was, for me, really interesting, and we'll be back, not super fast, but we'll be back with more recommendations to council about how we might encourage more affordable housing to be built more quickly.
Thank you. Any questions for Councilmember Gilman?
Just, I would be really interested if the Land Use and Environment Committee would have any initial thoughts to provide our staff as staff are working potentially on the third housing summit, just to kind of broaden that conversation a little bit. It seems very incentivizing focused rather than like broadly looking at what are other tools that have worked in other communities, even other countries, to provide affordable housing for a broad sector.
Well, I'll tell you what, I will bring that up, and we'll have a conversation. Yeah.
Can I remind you that we also, because we had been at public comment and from the Downtown Neighborhood Association asked to discuss the short-term rentals, and that was discussed as well, just for the public to recognize.
And that was on your work plan, the short-term rental policies?
So the conversation was much more narrowly focused on whether or not a unit that's being used as a short-term rental should be eligible for a multifamily property tax exemption. And so that's where we do have it for later this year on our work plan to talk more broadly about short-term rentals and how we might or might not regulate those. But the specific question was about if we give incentives, if we give public gifts to a development, should there be some way of monitoring whether or not those units are long-term rentals? How do we verify that? Do we rely on their report? It was a concern by a neighborhood group who believes there's a recent development that has several units that have been dedicated Airbnb units right from when the building opened.
Versus going for housing for our community. Got it. All right. Councilmember Parsley.
I have nothing to report.
All right. City Manager Steve Hall.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I have three quick items. First of all, last Thursday, we had a really fun dedication of the city's first pump track for bicycles, scooters, and skateboards. It was a great event, and my guesstimate, 100 people were there. If you've seen the pump track, it's kind of a regular oval. Everybody takes their turn. Everybody is very generous in terms of letting others go. One of our police officers on a bicycle got on with all the kids and was doing that. So it's really, really fun. So if you get a chance to go down, it's really another great way to activate that park down there between 4th and 5th Avenue. And then this Thursday at 3:30 p.m., we are going to dedicate the Ensign pathway that connects the Furs Apartments and other residential areas to the Shayless Western Trail. And that's a big deal. So 3:30 p.m. Ensign Road bike path dedication out at the Furs. And I just want to acknowledge Councilmember Gilman on this. I'm not sure if he'll be able to attend, but it's only happened because A, a lot of hard work by the Public Works Department, and B, that Councilmember Gilman kept calling and calling and calling our partners at the Furs until he got somebody way up the chain who said, yeah, we can make this work. So it really took a lot of hard work with staff and council to get this done. So Thursday, we get to actually cut the ribbon. So, and you should not ride your bike on Thursday. So, yeah. And then the final thing, and I have some sad news to report. We just heard last week that our former deputy city attorney, Darren Nienaber, passed away last week. Darren was with us for many, many years as the deputy city attorney, also did a brief stint as acting city attorney, and Darren has been battling brain cancer for several years, and last week he passed away. So at this point, there are no memorial service plans, but there may be something later in the year. So Darren, if you knew Darren, and you all knew Darren, he had an infectious smile, this great laugh, and that will continue even though his body's passed on. So anyhow, sad news.
Wow.
That's all I have.
Yeah. So please, yeah, keep us informed of a memorial. That's a huge loss. Any questions for our city manager? All right. With no further business before the Olympia City Council, we are adjourned.